if you study classical philology like I did, I got a degree in classics, and then I transitioned into philosophy with a master's program. So anyway, if you study classics, you'll notice a historic cultural trend, which is this veneration of the classical period, the classical era, as this absolute peak of human civilization. And the classical era is essentially just the city-state of Athens in the 5th century BC. So there's this veneration of this period within philology, but generally culturally as well. And with it comes also a veneration of the political system and the value system that came with it, the political system of the time and the value system that came with it, which sprang from the polis, the city-state. And of course, again, they're talking about Athens. So the Athenian polis was, to a great extent, a lot of direct democracy, you would say. And, of course, the concept of being a citizen was, of course, something very important. And now, out of this, later on, especially through Rousseau, and then also in a different way reinforced by Marx, arose a value system which a lot of those people who venerate the classical period, but a lot of people in general nowadays, and for the last decades now, celebrate and hold highly, is this value system of the absolute peak of human virtue is to be a citizen and not an individual. Now, I don't want to comment on how despicable I find this value system, but something I want to comment on is that many of those people tend to even go as far as to say that the ancient Greeks, and when they say ancient Greeks, of course they mean 5th century BC Athenians, but anyway, that the ancient Greeks didn't even have a concept for the individual. Now, this, of course, is absolutely ridiculous. The concept of the individual is an a priori idea. It's not, does not depend on your social environment. It has much more to do with with human brain structure and human pattern recognition, and human ability to see things as distinct units than anything else. And when I discuss this, I usually go back to Aristotle in a way most people won't expect. Now Aristotle does talk about the polis. To keep things short, his thought process on the polis is, well, he sees that in the polis, humans have the best life possible. Therefore, in his thought, this translates as the polis being part of human teleology, and therefore the polis being an intrinsic part of human nature. I don't really have a problem with that. That's, depending on how you take it, it's actually very reasonable. Then Aristotle goes on to describe something very interesting. His concept of the apolis. Apolis essentially means cityless. It's the human being that lives outside of the city. And Aristotle says that the apolis has to be either beast or god. Now, all this tells us a couple of things. Firstly, it tells us that, yes, Aristotle, and by extension the ancient Greeks in general, absolutely had an understanding of somebody who's perfectly capable of living not as a citizen. The emphasis is not about being a citizen or not. It's about living within the confines of the city or not. And for Aristotle, the way he describes it, for someone to be able to live outside of the city, he has to be either a beast or god. Now, let's think about that. Aristotle doesn't go that much into it, but I think it's fairly easy to understand if we keep on thinking about this. To live outside of the city, outside of human society, essentially, okay, you have to either be a beast, which means possess the purity of strength of a beast, in which case the city is no place for you. You know, this purity of strength, this beastly, this strong, this beastly savagery belongs outside in nature, in the wilds. If you're a pure urge and you have the strength to back it up, you belong in the wilds. And that's not a value judgment. It's just a description, a logical conclusion. Or you have to be a god, meaning, the way I see it and the way I explain it, you have to be, you are such a mentally elevated creature that the entire value system, the entire concept of the polis is ridiculous to you. Not ridiculous as in a value judgment, but you have transcended the concept of the polis. You are content in your own mind, and the social environment is nothing more than a cage for you, essentially, at that point. It doesn't really offer you something. You have become too mentally evolved to function easily and properly without friction within a collective, of a human society and its values. Now, I would actually argue that the apolis, the exceptional individual, is actually a combination of beast and God. And you'll see where I'm going with this. Essentially, human nature is constituted of beast and God, but the way those two elements interact is different in the common man and different in the exceptional individual. The common man is a balance between beast and God, a balance between raw natural urge and higher intellect, let's say. Whereas the exceptional individual is a combination of those things. He is a combination of the raw natural urge and higher intellect. Essentially, what the common man is, he is an id which is framed and filtered by a superego. He is essentially just his natural animalistic urge, which is mechanically I don't want to say that it's not organic, but he's essentially his raw drive filtered by a social structure that has been born and its values that all this has been born out of natural necessities. Okay? Say that again to say it a little bit better. The common man is essentially just raw drive filtered by a social system and its values that have been born out of natural necessities. The exceptional individual, on the other hand, is a solid, brilliant ego that is aware and not at all ashamed of its id. He's essentially pure higher intellect. And from that vantage point, he looks upon his atavistic, animalistic side, and he understands it, and he doesn't, beyond practical matters, he does not see the need of the kind of lowly filtering that happens with the common man. So the exceptional individual is really a combination of beast and God. He is a God beast, a theotherian, as I like to call it. And, you know, the way beast and God although they seem like direct opposites. The way they are so close is by their commonly shared opposition to this, their commonly shared opposition of their purity in opposition to this lowly bastardizing effect of this constant filtering of the id by a superego that constitutes the common man. The common man, essentially, what he is a feeble pseudo projection of an ego, a feeble illusion of an ego that is created by this filtering of a base id by an also base superego. And on the other hand, you have the combined purity of ego and id, of an unashamed id that is unashamed because it beholds itself from the vantage point of a clear crystallized ego, from a mentally elevated point. Nietzsche, one of Nietzsche's famous quotes, and I'm not going to quote exactly, but I'm going to say the gist of it, is his idea that the great thing about man is that he is not an end. Man is a bridge and not an end. And he is a bridge to the Superman, the Übermensch. This higher elevated form of man. And Aristotle's apolis, and especially the way I have presented him as a Theotherian, is certainly a kind of Übermensch, of Superman. And the common man who belongs to the teleology of the natural human teleology of the city, of society, of the polis, he is just the bridge to that. The apolis sheds the balance between beast and God to become a combination of beast and God. He sheds this bastardizing for the sake of purity. He's essentially shedding his humanity to become more, to become not man, but Übermensch. And by abandoning the city, abandoning society, essentially, what does that really mean, abandoning society? It means abandoning the superego, transcending the superego. And this transcending of the superego is definitely a form of existential maturity, and it is also a transformation from citizen, from essentially, if you see it on a more cosmic scale, from a human being bound by collective human teleology, a transition from that to being a pure individual. And once that happens, essentially you are transformed into a Theotherian, a god beast. You can then enjoy your beastly side. It's not uncontrolled. It is controlled, but it's not controlled by a lowly value system born of natural necessities, but it is controlled by the awareness gained from having a crystallized ego, from having reached that elevated state of individuation, essentially, right? This is the basic gist of all of it, and the basic difference between the common man and the exceptional individual, which are ontologically different species, if you want to see it that way. They belong to different spheres. And when I'm going to do my episode on the ontological class pyramid, you'll see what I'm talking about. The common man is not really that much more than an ant. An ant exists only in the capacity and the frame of its part in the mechanism of the anthill, of the nest. So does the common man. The apolis, who abandons the city, abandons essentially he essentially abandons the superego by going outside of natural human teleology. He becomes a god in the wilds, in a way. Think of it as intellectual wilds, if you will. Does not really mean that you'll become a naturalist and a survivalist, but it is this individuation. From a certain point of view, you can almost say you're going out of the natural order. You're not going out of the natural order. You're transcending humanity's role as a bridge, and you have reached this destination. You have undergone this process of individuation, of mental elevation, and have reached that stage. Anyway, in the end, I kept blabbering on a little bit because I didn't really plan on how to end this video, but I think Aristotle's apolis is a very interesting concept. I think it's very much worth it doing research on it from the point of view of the Nietzschean Übermensch. And so yeah, I hope you enjoyed my thoughts. I'm sure many of you will have a lot to say about this. Many of you amongst my small audience. Can't wait to see what you have to say about this. I'm sure we'll have lovely discussions. So guys, thanks for listening. Bye. Thanks for watching my video. My name is Michael Versatoulis, and when I'm not ranting on YouTube or doing university-related stuff, I like to create dark, weird art of all kinds. Be sure to find me on social media and also visit my art-related sites. Also keep in mind that you can buy my works like my books, my music, t-shirt designs, art prints, and more. Thank you.